Hello and welcome to another edition of the Fifth Quarter. I'm Mike Ciarochi, sports editor of Herald-Standard.com, and I'm joined today by George Von Benko, WMBS fame and Memory Lane fame as well. George, welcome to the 2011 season.
That's a rude awakening. It's a rude welcome is what it is. I'm glad I didn't have anything to do with the predictions last week.
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think I was a little off on my 24-21.
What was amazing about that is I can only really pick out one member of the Pittsburgh media that I know for sure that was leaning toward Baltimore in this game, and that was our friend Paul Alexander.
Oh,
He's the only one that I know for sure that felt that this could happen. And a lot of people were calling it, if it was going to be a blowout, it was going to be the Steelers' way.
Yeah, I kind of thought there was a better chance of that as well.
Nobody saw this coming.
No. Of course, we're talking about Sunday's 35-7 Baltimore win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was ugly from the Steelers' perspective. It was ugly from the first play of the game and didn't get any prettier.
No question about that. I was working on Sunday covering baseball, but as the Pirates do, they'll put the game up on sets above us there. And I happened to glance up, and the very first play turned out to be a Ray Rice 36-yard run. And I'm looking, I said, that's not good.
No. And they ran right at the strength of the Steelers' run defense was right at Brett Kiesel and James Harrison, and they kept running. They ran left the whole game, and have to look. I know it was over 100 yards, 107 yards on 19 carries, with a touchdown rushing for Ray Rice. A great game for him. Of course, he also had a touchdown receiving in the game.
And it's not as if he hasn't done it against the Steelers before. He's the first back to go over 100 yards rushing against the Steelers since he did that in 2009, in December of 2009. But the other thing is the way they used Ray Rice in the passing game. And it just ripped up the Steeler linebackers.
Yeah, and I'm going to look for the halftime stats because there were a couple things. There were 11 completions in the first half for Baltimore. I believe only 2 of them were by wide receivers. Take that back, maybe 3. Two catches, both by Anquan Bolden. One, of course, resulting in a touchdown. Lee Evans, three targets, no catches in the first half. Besides Ray Rice, they really went to the linebacker, to the tight ends.
And they had problems there, too.
Yeah, oh yeah, there were... Dixon had 3 catches in the first half. Peta had 2 catches in the first half. They really schemed well against the Steelers, and they picked on the Steeler linebackers.
Well, I think if you put the 2 tight ends together, they had a total of 81 yards in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. And it just and the guy that it was particularly sticking out like a sore thumb is the guy that just was signed to a contract not too long ago. And everybody is talking about what a great breakout season that this guy could have. And I still think he's going to be a tremendous player in the Steelers' defense, but that was Lawrence Timmons. They targeted Lawrence Timmons.
Yeah, when you said the guy who just signed a new big contract, I wasn't sure if you were talking about him or
Palomalo didn't cover the tight end on one play.
Didn't have a great game either. James Harrison was just re-signed. Was that this year or last year? No, it wasn't this year.
It wasn't this year. Yeah.
He may have health issues going. It's hard to pick out who looked worse.
Well, we haven't even discussed the offense
yet.
I
know, but I mean, just among defensive players. But that Aaron Smith may be healthy finally, but he sure
got blown up on a couple of plays. Well, that was the thing that scared me.
And not.
And I think you wrote that too about
the defense. Yeah,
that's the first time I can recall them showing their age.
I asked James Ferrier point blank. I said it looked as though you guys, no matter what Baltimore tried to do, you guys were kind of a step behind or a step off the pace. And he said it felt like that too. He said we were a step off pace. But to a man, all the Steelers said the same thing in this sense as well. Everything that happened in this game is fixable, correctable. It's only 1/16 of the season. There's nobody pointing fingers, nobody pushing panic buttons, nobody ready to jump into one of the three rivers.
Well, I was worried that I was watching the Clemente Bridge the other day just to make sure that nobody was running to the bridge to jump off, because you know what Steeler Nation is like especially since it's the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes.
I mean, that rubs salt in the wound even more.
Well, you know, and I think Ben made a comment about it. They might have been, Baltimore obviously was gunning for this game, really looking forward to meeting up with the Steelers. You know, last year, don't forget, it was the Steelers who knocked Baltimore out of the playoffs.
Yeah, they came back on them in that playoff game.
The same 21-7 deficit that they couldn't overcome this time.
Well, I think that they did, even though Baltimore, in a lot of respects, food that aspect of it. Flacco had been taking flack. How do you like that? Flacco had been taking flack from the Baltimore media and from the fans about not being able to beat Pittsburgh and Roethlisberger, and I think it definitely was the elephant in the room, even though they didn't want to acknowledge it. It was the elephant in the room for the Ravens.
Yeah. And speaking of players not playing well against the Steelers, how about Ed Reed? The safety, he had one interception, I believe, in 9 career games against Ben Roethlisberger. Doubled him yesterday.
Well, and that was something that was pointed out. They had done such a great job of just making him a non-entity in most of the games. He didn't make any plays. And Roethlisberger, what do you say about that? You know, he was supremely confident that the Steelers went through the preseason without one turnover.
Right.
During the preseason, he had thrown 173 consecutive passes without an interception before he was picked off less than a minute into the first quarter.
Yeah.
And it started rolling downhill after that.
Yeah, that's why they make them play the games, I guess.
Yeah.
We mentioned a 21-7 halftime deficit of the Steelers. What I think quite uncharacteristic of the Steelers is coming into the second half. They begin with turnovers on their first 2 plays and their first 3 series of the third quarter.
Well, and you know, I was trying to watch the game in between trying to write the baseball game, and I kept on looking up, and I said, I thought they had the ball. How did Baltimore get the ball so quick? You know?
Yeah, but believe me, it was something to watch. It was over very quickly in the third quarter. You figured, you know, at halftime, you're down 21-7, and you figure, hey, you know, the Steelers have played lousy the whole first half, but you know what? They're capable of turning it around, getting in the locker room. Get some words of wisdom from the coordinators to the players. Let's switch up. Let's try this. Let's do that. Nothing worked.
Well, I want to mention that you know, it was a total team effort, defensively, offensively, special teams, and coaching. I really think Baltimore did some things that the Steelers just could not find a way to answer.
You know, they tried to stay a step ahead, and it worked from the first minute to the 59th and through the 60th. I mean, it was just it was just amazing to watch, actually. But you know, it was only one game.
The sky's not falling.
No, right. And this week we have Seattle coming in. Actually, the next 2 weeks are, I guess you would call them winnable games.
Well, Seattle lost, and Indianapolis looked absolutely horrible without Peyton Manning.
Right.
You know, so.
But you know, they have 2 weeks to get better from that before they face the Steelers, and that's a night game too, and it's in Indy. You know, after that they got Houston. So
and Houston looked
looked as impressive as Indy looked poor.
All right. Well, and a lot of people are looking at Houston as a team that's going to surprise some people this year.
Yeah,
so it's not going to be easy. But you're right, though. Everything is correctable. I liked what Paul Amalo said too about it being a wake-up call. Maybe we needed this.
Yeah. You hate for it to come against a bitter division rival
on
opening day,
but maybe they were reading it.
Maybe there it is. Yeah, could be. Ryan Clark had a lot of comments about that too. We can't become a been there done that team. You know, whether we were in the Super Bowl last year or 3 years ago means absolutely nothing right now. This is the 2011 season. I think Ray Lewis from the Ravens had similar comments. You know, you can't live out of the past. We can't. From the Ravens' perspective, they didn't fold up at halftime as they did last year at Heinz Field in the playoffs. They kept at it. They kept, you know. They not only forced the turnovers, but at least on the first one, they capitalized on it. They took it right to the end zone. The second one was when James Harrison blew up a running play on a 4th down, when they should have kicked the field goal, actually.
Right.
And after the third turnover, before the third turnover, the Steelers had driven the length of the field pretty much, and had a turnover at the goal line with Ben looking for Heath Miller and finding Ed Reed instead. And what did the Ravens do then? Drove the length of the field right back and put it in the end zone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one game. There's a lot of football to be played yet. There were some peculiar things, though, that I think are going to be addressed as this week unfolds. And one of the things, and you and I talked about it before we started taping this edition of the 5th quarter, is the James Ferrier-Larry Foote situation.
Yeah.
They can say all they want to say about wanting to get Larry Foote some playing time, but I can't ever recall him being out for almost a whole quarter, James Ferrier.
Yeah, no, I know. We were asking the PR guys in the press box, hey, is there any injury for Ferrier? What's what's going on? And they just kind of shook their heads and said, nope, nothing to report on that. And of course, in the third quarter, he was back in the game. Ferrier was, and I didn't notice really the second half. It was kind of out of control by then. I didn't notice if they were still rotating or not.
I didn't notice either, but it was very noticeable in that one quarter that the Foote was in there for most of the plays.
The second quarter. I believe most of the second quarter, you had a large dose of Larry Foote and very little, if any, of James Ferrier. Now, that could be an effort to save what James Ferrier has left and have it stretch over 16 games, but you're going to need a little more production from Larry Foote if that's going to work.
Well, there's no question about that. And if you're going to save people, that leads to another source of much talk on radio and in columns and everything is why would Ben Roethlisberger still be in the game that late? And leave those people in. And he was taking some shots to the very end. He got hit on the last play.
You know what? If I'm Ben Roethlisberger, I'd be upset if I was taken out of that game. These guys are competitors. You're risking injury, but you know what? Anytime you step between the lines, you're risking injury.
I know that.
Another factor is, for whatever it's worth, they did not dress Dennis Dixon. So Charlie Batch goes out there and he gets hurt.
Then there are some extenuating, but it sort of made you wonder because he was taking a beating.
Yeah, he was.
Throughout and that's the credit to Baltimore. They came after. There were several, and you've got issues on the offensive line.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Legursky had a rough game.
Yes, he did.
And Jonathan Scott just looked terrible.
Terrell Suggs with 3 sacks.
Well, where does it say you can't double team Terrell Suggs? A lot of people were wondering about that. You can't handle Terrell Suggs one-on-one.
Yeah, true.
And the other thing is Marquise Pouncey, and Ben alluded to it, there were some communication problems with the center and the guards on a couple. That's what led to the first sack. When Suggs came around and nobody was there, they didn't make the right call, and so there were some things going on there too.
Yeah. Well, they got it all on film now, like it or not. It's probably a fairly ugly film session.
I don't think that's a film session I'd want to sit through.
No. Next up is Seattle, coming off a tough loss to San Francisco yesterday. Pete Carroll in his second year, I guess, once again trying to prove he deserves to be an NFL head coach. What are your thoughts on the Seahawks?
Well, I was surprised really because I wasn't sure San Francisco was going to be anything to write home about. I just didn't see Alex Smith, making any progress there, and they handled him pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I'm a little surprised by that. I just think, I'm not really concerned about Seattle. I'm concerned about Pittsburgh fixing the problems that they had going in. I mean, it all lays in your own backyard. You got to take care of business yourself and play football the way that many people think you're capable of playing.
Yeah, that's for sure. I agree with that. And with that, we are about out of time. We want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next week, hopefully with better results.